What's up, everyone? We're live, and welcome to a special edition, Yom HaShoah, Holocaust Remembrance Day edition of our LinkedIn Live of our show here. I have a really special guest. We got Gabe Duec. He has a mouthful of a position because that's all the responsibility he has. Tell me if I'm getting this right. Social media marketer and digital activities or something? How's it go?
Exactly. Social media and digital projects at Yad Vashem.
Social media and digital projects at Yad Vashem. All right, that's a lot to remember. It's a lot of stress. So stress it can make your hair turn gray or orange. So let's get right. So let's get this. Okay, it's Yad Vashem. Say it again.
It's a California sunshine, actually.
There you go. Yes, in quarantine in your Jerusalem apartment, a lot of orange. So for those that don't know, today is Yom HaShoah. It's Holocaust Remembrance Day, and we're going to go into a few things, real short, why it's important to remember, because it sounds like a question we don't ask, really, like why and what does it mean, and more importantly, how do we use marketing and digital activities and digital marketing and the relevant during this time, and specifically digital activities to remember during coronavirus when there aren't any personal activities and is the museum closed, I assume?
Yeah, we're temporarily closed. The whole campus, everything is kind of shut down for now.
Okay, cool. And the museum is closed. And so we're going to talk a little about Yad Vashem and obviously most importantly, Yom HaShoah, Holocaust Remembrance Day, and marketing. All right, to get everyone up to speed, given that everyone's sleeping over in America, so we're getting most of our audiences in Israel and we're getting some in Europe, is that today was Holocaust Remembrance Day. And today at 10 o'clock, which was a half hour ago, we had... tell us, what did we have? We had a thing called the Azakah. It was a siren. Why don't you tell us a little about this siren?
Right. So every year on Yom HaShoah, Holocaust Remembrance Day, one of the days of the year, here in Israel that we do this. So we sound the country, all around the country, we sound a siren for about a minute at 10 a.m. And it's kind of a time of reflection. And you see people on the streets, stopping, getting out of their cars. Highways kind of come to a standstill. And it's a really meaningful time, for that moment. We have this day, and within this day, we have this kind of consolidated, amount of time to commemorate and think about the 6 million Jews who were murdered during the Holocaust. So it's every year Yom HaShoah at 10 a.m. and it's a really meaningful opportunity.
Awesome. Okay, cool. So, but how do you remember something when there isn't, for like in general, not just this year because of the pandemic, but there isn't like an activity? Obviously there's celebrations, we can remember like, the exodus from Passover, from Egypt, from slavery into freedom with Passover and the Seder, or Independence Day in Israel or whatever country, you have celebrations and fireworks, maybe a parade. How do you remember something that's sad, something that's intangible, and something that's happened a long time ago?
So it's a great question. That's specifically one of the challenges, that Yad Vashem has is, we hear this, this number, 6 million Jews. Everyone knows this number. We took Holocaust classes in, Jewish school growing up and all these different programs that we do, but it's hard to, to conceptualize what that actually means. So one of the ways that Yad Vashem approaches it is by focusing, not just, of course, on the stats, on the 6 million, but also try to focus on the individual story of different, Holocaust victims, Holocaust survivors, and to kind of focus in on their experiences. And through that, we can learn about, experiences of themselves, of their family, their community, their country. And, by telling the personal story of each person as much as we can, so we're able to kind of conceptualize, to begin to conceptualize what that number means. Wow, 6 million people, were murdered. And it kind of begins to put it in perspective a little bit. Right.
Just to get a perspective between LinkedIn and Facebook, we have like 18 people watching live. Perspective. All right, joke's over. Great. So tell me a little bit what you guys do in general. Is it the same thing more or less every year? And tragically, as more Holocaust survivors, leave this world for the next, how does remembering it shift? The actual marking Holocaust Remembrance Day, and like how does that happen? And then I have a bunch of questions. How do you teach it to kids, and what kind of marketing are you doing around this stuff? I find it very fascinating because you probably have one of the more challenging, tiptoeing, probably the most sensitive subjects to market about, that everyone agrees that we need to do marketing about it. It's important to remember, important to do, but everyone has their own sensitivities personally to them and their families, or as nation, or or many other victims. So, I mean, how do you explain to me, how does Yad Vashem do that? And then how do you adapt that digitally where you have the internet mobs?
Right. It's a good question. I mean, obviously, it's an extremely sensitive topic in the world. Especially in 2020. It's not like 75 years later now after liberation, it's still a relevant topic, unfortunately, in the world, and especially in Israel. In Israel, I think every single citizen, every single person in this country, has some sort of connection to the Holocaust. Where people have names, they have experiences, families. Everyone it's always relevant in Israeli society. So it's definitely a very sensitive topic. In general, I guess I'll speak about, Yad Vashem in general online. So we're always active throughout the year, especially during the Yom HaShoah period, and especially right now during the coronavirus pandemic that's happening. It's amplified, but we're always on social media. We're always digitally, digital first kind of mentality. We have a website in 8 languages, YouTube in 8 languages, Twitter in 5 languages, Facebook
Jeez.
in 2, Instagram in 2 languages. And people sometimes, I go to these marketing conferences in Israel, and people see my name tag, like Yad Vashem, and they're like, "Are you lost? Like, this can't be the right place for you." And,
Why? Right.
yeah, exactly. And so that's a great way to obviously explain to people that we are active across the digital spectrum. And not just that we have accounts, but they're maintained every day, tweets, posts, whatever it is, relevant content that we're sharing. So you asked about specifically now. So now all of that responsibility that we have throughout the year, that Yad Vashem has throughout the year, has fallen on the digital department especially. It's been a very intense period the past couple of months, and I don't know if you're familiar, if I could speak a little bit about also the general program that we do on Yad Vashem and how it's been changed this year throughout everything that's happening. So, in general, we have the tekes, the opening ceremony, the state opening ceremony the night before. It's attended by the Prime Minister and the President and the head of Yad Vashem and Holocaust survivors, of course, and different people involved in the Yad Vashem community. This year, we still had that, but it was recorded in advance. It was put up on our website and Facebook and YouTube last night, and it was filmed without an audience. So that's one of the main events we have each year, specifically on Yom HaShoah, which we had to adapt, obviously, for 2020.
Right. Yeah. So tell me about, how do you manage, how many people are on your digital team, right? Because you got multiple languages, and you speak English, Spanish, and Hebrew yourself, right? So what are the languages are you guys in? Let's start there. That's actually interesting.
Yeah. So in terms of social media, we're active in Hebrew, English, obviously, German, Russian, Spanish, and French. And we have obviously a dedicated employee to each of those languages on social media and on the website. And then on the website, we have a lot of people don't know this. We have an Arabic website, a website in Farsi, and it's a way to connect with people around the world who maybe don't have the opportunity to visit the museum itself, or don't even know really what Israel is, what the Holocaust was. So we have all of these ways to connect with people all around the world.
Awesome. Great. Okay. So, and how do you guys communicate internally? I mean, I know it's such a sensitive subject. So is there a big chain of command? You know what I mean? These are the rules. I work with a pharmaceutical, and we write ads, and 3 people have to review it. Then they send it to legal, and they send it back. Then we make a revision. It's such a sensitive subject. Do you find that also? That it takes really hard to get the messaging out because the wrong adjective, the wrong emphasis or something, a lot of people can, let's say, take offense. How do you get the right messaging out, and how do you do it quickly? Because I think this is a problem that maybe everyone can relate to, is especially now when people are putting out ads related to the coronavirus, they don't want to seem that they're they're profiting off of it or they're taking advantage of the opportunity. But at the same time, it's obviously as real, very much in the headlines and part of people's lives more than anything else. So obviously you can't avoid the elephant in the room. So, how does one go about use sensitive information and marketing material without coming off as taking advantage of a sensitive situation?
Right. It's a good question. we always have to be sensitive in terms of the content we're promoting. Each word, people around the world, their eyes are on us, and especially on the on digital platforms, every single word, like you mentioned, has a larger meaning. So I think it starts honestly with good leadership, within the department, within the organization, in terms of everyone is on the same page towards the same goal, and it kind of flows down from that.
Got it. But give me an example of, let's say, one of the challenges you might have.
So listen, when I first started, I had a background, so to speak, in Holocaust. I'd been to Eastern Europe in Holocaust education. I had taken courses in high school and in college. But I never thought about all the different sensitivities that each word, in terms of even things like country names and where cities were located, because at that time, cities were changing,
different countries.
Exactly.
Right. That's why people call it Eastern Europe. Can you hear me? I think we're having a technical issue.
Yeah.
Okay, you went out for a second. Okay, cool. Okay, got it. Yeah, so it's crazy. So let's see now. Okay, so now it's COVID-19, and now we're talking about marketing. We're talking about the sensitivity of different words. So tell me about, let's say specifically, how is Yad Vashem, before even talking about having to go digital, and your usual sensitivities that you need to do, which is a very interesting example, just talking about, how you could spell a word or to say what country things are, you know what I mean? A lot of people are very sensitive to this. A lot of countries are victims of the Holocaust also. They don't want to see themselves as being perpetrators, even though because a lot of atrocities happened within their borders. So I understand those sensitivities. What kind of sensitivities do you think that you've learned in your position doing digital and social for Yad Vashem, for Holocaust Remembrance, that you think people can apply today for during the coronavirus?
So I think, the first step, and this is really like the first thing we did, is reassess, right? We had to adapt, and every marketer right now has to adapt in one way or another. There are changes that have to be made. So, before we can start implementing all those changes, we first took a step back and kind of assessed what we want to do, what content we have, what we want to share, how we want to connect with people. Is it going to be on social media? Is it going to be via newsletter? Is it going to be all these different ideas? And we had a lot of like a brainstorming period about what we're going to do now. And I think, the first step is taking a step back even, and just looking at what you have. And okay, how can we package this material to relevant audiences? How can we connect with people in a meaningful way, especially now? People are at home, people are looking for resources. And so Yad Vashem kind of stepped into that role. And for example, we have all of these educational resources on our website. We have like prepared lesson plans for teachers. There are teachers around the world who all of a sudden have to adapt to digital teaching. And so we started sharing all of these, lesson plans, educational videos, short kind of conceptual things that people can look at and share with their students, or parents can share with their kids. So that's an example. We took a step back, we looked, and we thought that, let's push this aspect. Let's push digital lectures on Zoom, which a lot of people are doing too.
Right. Yeah, that might change permanently. A few comments. Omri Hurwitz says this is so important. We should all remember how important Holocaust Memorial Day is. Yes. And it's so easy to forget how important it is, because it's, thank God, it's so not part of our daily lives or anything of the sort. So it's important to mark it and find the time to remember it throughout the year, but in particular to have a designated day that we as a nation and people and the human race do it. Jeremy Ladner says, a great topic, great show. Thanks so much, buddy. Ariel Levin shows some support, saying, what's up, awesome guys. Guys, if you have any comments, questions, or anything about in general, please leave it over in the lives on LinkedIn or Facebook. Also, if you have any questions about any marketing messaging during coronavirus, Gabe has a unique perspective, given that he needs to be sensitive year-round, what to say, what not to say. You're curious about certain ad messaging or targeting, or you have your own 2 cents or input or things you've learned. Share it. We're all here to help and learn each other and learn together. So please leave those over in the comments. Now, back to like Holocaust education. I mean, I feel like people don't want to, adults, they don't want to talk about it. It's uncomfortable. It's unpleasant. Many of us don't like to do the unpleasant. and especially many of us don't want, I think it's kind of childish, and childish is the right word. We don't want to teach our kids. We kind of try to want to overprotect them, and we do that, unfortunately, at their expense by undereducating and underexposing them to probably the most important topics in life. Do you think what I just said is true?
I think that everyone has a difficulty one way or another relating to Holocaust content, because it's not something that that, number one, it's not something that people come across, every single day per se, unless you work at Yad Vashem, and it's something that's, like you said, is hard to teach. What level of exposure are we going to give our 13-year-old son, 13-year-old daughter to the crimes and the atrocities of the Holocaust? I do think that there is a way to introduce certain ideas at the right age. Obviously, and that's kind of one of the, even if you look at the Holocaust History Museum at Yad Vashem, so it's for ages 14 plus, meaning that you have to be a minimum age to go in because it's such a heavy topic. But there are different things in the museum that different people can relate to, whether you're a student or you're a teacher, you're a child, a mother, a father, a brother, religious, not religious. It has the stories, and that's what's so important about Holocaust victims and survivors' stories, is that you can use those stories to relate to different people in educating about the Holocaust. And that's one of the things the museum does. That's one of the things that we try to do on social media, that we do on social media as well, is give over the stories, because those can be packaged to people in a way that you can understand experiences and understand the greater history of what's happening, what happened during the Holocaust.
Got it. Great. So what are you guys doing differently now to remember, given that we're a pandemic, we have to work virtually? Do you have any projects that you're doing uniquely this year?
Yeah, I mean, aside from our general, digital, everything that's always happening on digital, we've really ramped it up over the past month and a half, month now. In terms of, after I mentioned we reassessed, we looked at what we want, what we need to share, what people need right now to hear in their lives. And we started, like a digital Zoom lecture series of fascinating topics about the Holocaust and how they relate to this time of year specifically. So, we have lectures about, Passover throughout the generations, before, during, and after the Holocaust. We have an online exhibition about that as well. And now we started kind of gearing in towards Yom HaShoah, Yom HaZikaron, Yom HaTzmaut, the three major days that are happening on the Israeli calendar, on the Jewish calendar, in the next week and a half. So we definitely had to pivot, I guess would be the word. Even during, this started in March, right? March, I think mid-March, everyone was already kind of working from home. So March is Holocaust, March 8th was International Women's Day, Women's Month, right? And so we shared lectures about, women and resistance during the Holocaust, which I think is extremely interesting. That's really relevant for that into that period of time. And so we're trying to do that, moving forward as well.
Mm-hmm. Do you guys take advantage of all those like unique as many of them unique days, like today is National whatever day, and see how maybe when relevant you can tie them in, or you kind of try to stay away from those kind of things? It might be, some people might think it's inappropriate. No,
so we actually, we definitely do that. We especially on social media, Instagram, Facebook, and Twitter, specifically. Right. So there's World Neighbor Day, which I think is in World Friendship Day, which is in like November or something. And so we share stories about, Righteous Among the Nation, of people who helped save Jews during the Holocaust.
My neighbors, yeah.
Exactly. We try to relate that content that we have, which is, like we said, hard to package, and make it relevant for whatever's happening throughout the calendar year.
The ones you can't do like National Pizza Day or things like that.
There are certain things that are off limits for the understand. Yeah.
I mean, if you I'm sure you can find a way if you want it. And you were telling me before something about you're doing virtual name reading. Can you tell us a little bit about tell me about this project. Because guys, this is something we can all do now. We're all talking about how you can remember, and I was just saying like how we can actually help our families and our kids. And so awkward, like what do you want to talk about? So I mean, obviously you can, in the very generic sense, you can explain it, but I think you said you're doing something that you guys are like reading off names, take a little video and you'll put online, and then your family and your kids might be able to see you and other people reading it. You'll understand that it's something bigger than just what's going on in your house. Can you explain to us a little bit about that?
For sure. So the idea is it's like an online participatory project, initiative that people around the world can join and are already joining. the idea is, each year we have at Yad Vashem during Yom HaShoah specifically a name reading ceremony where people, come physically to the campus and they read the names of their loved ones, family members, or random Holocaust victims, people who were, Jews who were murdered during the Holocaust. This year, obviously, that couldn't happen. So what we created is, like you said, a virtual digital name reading campaign where people around the world, and this is something you can do with your family, with young kids, they're reading names of Holocaust victims that were murdered during the Holocaust, whether it's, again, family members or random people. We have a list available of names for people that might want to take a random name. And the idea is to take that video, short video, reading names, kind of restore their identity and restore their dignity as much as possible, so that they're not forgotten, and then upload it to social media using one of two or both hashtags, actually, hashtag Shoah names and hashtag remembering from home. And so
I don't interrupt you. Go ahead.
Yeah, no, towards the end of Holocaust Remembrance Day, later on today here in Israel, we're going to make a virtual ceremony of all these people reading from around the world, which
amazing. So wait, we can do this now, and then we can all watch your ceremony. So I found a link on Facebook. Can I share this link in the chat?
Yeah, please put it in the chat, put it in the comments, and people can obviously reach out to me with any questions that they have about it.
And then
we've seen people joining around the world. Foreign minister from Germany, president of Slovenia, all these important people are joining the project already.
Amazing. Hold up, I'm trying to.
So while you do that, if I could highlight one video that we got, which I think was especially meaningful.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, please. And by the way, I just want to emphasize, guys, with your kids, just read a few names. And I got the link. I'm sharing it now in Facebook. There's a guy named Betos, his great program, Kol HaKavod. And do you know him? You guys have the same last name. Yeah. A couple comments. Amir Ness says, good job, Kol HaKavod. Jeremy Lander says, Gabi, is there an active partnership with the Shoah Foundation and getting access to all the doc films of survivors made in the 90s? My Zeta, Henry Seigelfarb was one of those. Is there a way that he wanted to get access to, so his Zeta's grandfather is one of those videos made in the 90s. I know Steven Spielberg was very much involved in this. Of recording memories. Is there a way how can they get these archives so he can show his family?
For sure. So for anyone who might not know, the USC Shoah Foundation, which headed in the beginning by Spielberg, they recorded over, I think up to date, over 50,000 Holocaust survivor testimonies, video testimonies, and so it's an incredible project. We have a section also on our website. There is has been cooperation between us in the past, and so Yad Vashem has many of those and our own testimonies on our website as well, thousands of them. So you could check if it's on our website if you search the person's name or look in the survivor testimony video database. And in addition to that, so USC Shoah Foundation has put, as far as I know, all of their testimonies online. I don't have the link in front of me, but if you Google USC Shoah Foundation testimonies, you should be able to find a link to all of their stuff online.
Actually, if anyone wants to, and Jeremy Ladner also, send me a private message on LinkedIn, or if you're watching this on Facebook or however, and then I'll forward over to Gabe, and he'll help you find your Zadie or your Bubby or someone from your family parent giving over a live testimony of them from the Holocaust. So if you message over to me, I'll make sure that you can get you that video. Daniel Greenberg says, he welcomes Yad Vashem's inclusion of material on other genocides. Hatred is a human problem, not just a Jewish one. Your institution is enormously important for the whole world. So I mean, it's an interesting debate topic if we're going to go this way. What is is it like, do other organizations or groups, do you feel, obviously, I mean, I think Holocaust being so atrocious and so well documented, is that, and so recent, but also so documented, such a scale, and coming out of the West, I think is probably the greatest thing, right? Out of the country that is most scientifically advanced, the most, liberal and enlightened country came out of Germany. You know what I mean? It's which is interesting in its own right. So obviously we have a whole bunch of more documentation because much more modern, a lot more cameras, and it just happened 75 years ago. Do you think that there's what is the right balance to the obligation of Yad Vashem to highlight other genocides without actually watering down its main purpose is first and foremost Holocaust remembrance before, and of course the importance of remembering other genocides. Obviously, there's a responsibility to highlight them, but you don't want to water down the main objective of Yad Vashem.
Right, and it's true. I mean, obviously, the Holocaust was a worldwide crisis. I mean, there's no denying, the rise of the Nazi Party and the implications it had on the entire world. But but in terms of the experiences that different communities, different peoples had during the Holocaust, so we see historically that the Jewish experience was different than any other people. So that's not to say, of course, that other people were not affected, or that it doesn't minimize the crimes in any way of what happened to other communities. But the Holocaust was the systematic murder of 6 million Jewish men, women, and children, and that's different than what happened with political prisoners, obviously, who were also in camps throughout Europe and North Africa. And so it doesn't take away from the other experiences that other people had. But Yad Vashem's mandate is to commemorate, remember, and document the Holocaust as a Jewish experience, as the 6 million Jews who were murdered during the Holocaust, because there was the Nazi platform, it didn't pursue other people the way it pursued the Jews, and wiping off every Jew from the face of the earth. So the Jewish experience was unique. That doesn't take away from other people's experiences, and so we focus on how the Holocaust was the systematic murder of the 6 million Jewish people. So that's our mandate. We do that by remembering victims, honoring survivors, and through Holocaust video testimony, and all these different online and physical exhibitions that we have both in Israel and abroad.
Mm-hmm. And so, anti-Semitism today. I went to Temple University in Philadelphia for my undergrad years ago, and there was an exorbitant amount of anti-Semitism. And speaking to other people now, I hear it hasn't gotten any better. And so, strangely, I haven't experienced. I've experienced a lot in America, in Philadelphia in particular. But what's strange to me is actually, I feel like, anti-Semitism seems like obvious. Okay, first off, would you agree or disagree that anti-Semitism will never go away? Do you agree or disagree with that sentence? I know you're now speaking for Gabi. Just for the record, I know not Yad Vashem, but obviously you have an interesting take.
Listen, whether or not it will go away, I think the obligation is to fight it. To fight it by learning from the past and acting today.
You sound like a politician. Okay, so okay, I understand your answer then. And do you think anti-Semitism, when it comes from different groups? So right in Germany, the Nazi, the National Socialist Party. Do you think, and then you see it in different groups and different generations, and different depending on often different countries and different cultures? Do you think that, and in your experience, you're working at Yad Vashem, do you think the Jews are the canary in the coal mine, if I'm saying that correct, in the coal mine? Barry Weiss from the New York Times, she said on Joe Rogan's podcast that the problem with anti-Semitism is that when there's an increase in anti-Semitism, it means your civilization is going to hell. It's more than anything, you have serious problems in your civilization. Do you think the rise of anti-Semitism in Europe, do you think that's a reflection of their civilization? Do you think one led to the other? Do you think the civilization is rotting, so then they turn to anti-Semitism? Based on your experience and all the education and the learning that you've done based on the Holocaust, are you seeing similar things in Europe or even in the United States?
Right. So, so that's the thing, is that anti-Semitism has been a problem, in the world for all of history. We see it back in the Middle Ages, whether it was religious. Now it's not religious to a certain extent. So I think it's important to remember that a lot of the xenophobia and a lot of the hatred that we see in society, it often manifests itself first and begins with anti-Semitism. But we know from history it doesn't end there, right? The hatred doesn't end with Jews, unfortunately. That there's hatred towards Jews, and it grows into bigger problems. And so one of the things that we do at Yad Vashem is we have a massive online open course, a free course about anti-Semitism to educate people. You mentioned on campus that there's anti-Semitism, so we have connections with with high school, middle school, and college professors to help fight that kind of at the grassroots, to help snub it out before it begins to be a big problem in society.
But
And so,
but I mean, but you're saying that, but it's becoming a bigger problem in society.
right. So that's why
Right. So do you think, how effective is it? I feel like it's like we're having really trouble getting into the education system because there's a lot of anti-Semitism on campus, particularly in the Western world. And actually, it's from socialists again. Actually, it was the socialists when it was the National Socialists from Germany, from Europe then, and from the socialists again today. So I'm seeing it on campus. I have an experience from a white supremacist and anti-Semitism. I haven't met one because there are very few of them, thank God, because they're evil, they're disgusting. And we've, as a Western society, we managed to stamp them out, ridicule them, and keep them on the sidelines. But I feel like we, as a society, have tolerated a lot of anti-Semitism. Even in American Congress, there are now open anti-Semites and believing in conspiracy theories against Jews. If the education hasn't happened there, and if major parties in the United States haven't actually addressed these people directly. I believe the U.S. Congress actually originally had something. They Ilhan Omar, an anti-Semite in the Democratic Party, she said some disgusting anti-Semitic things over and over again and wouldn't backtrack. And so Nancy Pelosi, who's the Speaker of the House of the Democratic Party from her party, wanted to we're standing against anti-Semitism, this bill, the statement by Congress, and then they watered it down. I feel like actually those that hate bigotry are actually losing this battle. Do you think I'm a little too worried, or maybe I'm a little oversensitive to this, or do you think that when it comes to education, us as humanitarians and people that really despise bigotry, do you think we're actually winning? Do you think we're gaining ground or losing ground?
So I think we need to look at the topic, the core issue of anti-Semitism, and without getting some people get really kind of dragged down with, oh, look what's happening in the world, right? But we need to kind of address that issue and see what we can do to fight it moving forward. In terms of like at Yad Vashem, we have this online course which we've opened to be free in multiple languages around the world to identify what is anti-Semitism. What are its bases, what are its roots. And what's interesting, you mentioned, the political spectrum. So that's one of the things about anti-Semitism is that it's, you see it on the extreme left this way, and you see it on the extreme right. You see it on both ends.
But I'm worried it's getting mainstream on both ends. From the right, more actually online, and for the left, actually for people in power. And that's what worries me. And by the way, I see this in Europe too. What some politicians in Europe are saying, straight up open anti-Semitism would have not been easily tolerated. Look at Jeremy Corbyn, right? Radical, open anti-Semite. And he made the full Labour Party in the UK has basically become a hardcore anti-Semitic party, to an organization that they started 15, 20 years ago to stamp out racism in politics, that was started by Labour, has now actually turned on Labour and investigating Labour because of their anti-Semitism. It's becoming more and more mainstream in politics. That worries more. I feel like the culture is strong enough to more like stamp it out, but for some reason, when it comes to actually electing politicians, when we're not electing racists, thank God. We're not electing other bigots, thank God. But for some reason, people have a tolerance, or they brush off anti-Semites that in politics, as opposed to any other groups.
Right. So all the more so. Listen, anti-Semitism is unfortunately alive in our society, like you mentioned, on the political, cultural spectrum, religious, all the different places that it could exist. It does exist to a certain extent. So, that's why Yad Vashem's mission is so much more important now. We're getting to a time where, we recognize it in a certain amount of years, there will not be survivors left to tell their story. So, now is the time to interact, to engage, to record stories and pages of testimony to make sure that these crimes aren't committed again in the future. And that's one of the powers of storytelling, of listening to a Holocaust survivor, is understanding what he experienced or she experienced as a kid in school, and how it started and where it began, and how they felt, and all these different things which don't come across in the stats, obviously.
Mm-hmm. Okay, got it. I understand. Okay, so I don't know what we can do. I personally feel, my opinion is that we're losing this battle against bigotry and anti-Semitism, in particular when it comes to the West. And I don't know what the solution is, but one is definitely education, and Yad Vashem plays a very important part, and storytelling plays a very important part. There's actually there's this podcast by Rachel Sorati called "We Share the Same Sky," and she's actually my cousin, and it's very, very well done. It's yeah, I think it's 7 chapters long. I'll share it if anyone wants to listen to it. I mean, I am not big on I don't spend that much time on podcasts that are not, let's say, business and marketing related, but this is definitely something you should check out. I put it over in the links on LinkedIn and Facebook Live. But I mean, she gives over the story really, really, really well of how my grandmother escaped and stayed one step ahead of the Nazis. It's actually, she's never actually personally interacted with any, but always managed to stay ahead. And all the people that had been there to help her hide and smuggle, her throughout the various countries in Europe until she made her way over to the United States. So if anyone wants to hear more a positive story of storytelling, I just shared that in the description. I do highly recommend it, and I promise you, you'll be hooked. It's only 7 short episodes. Great. So I want to bring a little bit back to marketing before we finish off soon, and messaging. So when it comes to, a few things. I remember reading a couple years ago that the posts that get the most reactions on Facebook are anger related, which is very sad. That's just thing about the human nature, which is why Twitter is such a shit show. It's just a bunch of mobs of angry and unhappy people. But they said the one that got the least, and they ranked them, was sad news. People didn't want to engage or acknowledge that something sad. So, I mean, let's say, God forbid, someone from your family passes away, and they don't want you to know that because maybe it's uncomfortable, you have an obligation, and all that. As a marketer, do you see a correlation between more happy versus unhappy posts and your engagement rate, basically your reactions divided by impressions, based on the tone of the post?
Yeah. So overall, over the past couple of years, I've been at Yad Vashem for coming up in 2 years. So we've seen a general trend of increase in engagement overall. When looking at the specific type of posts that people are engaging with more than others. So it's true that, when we share a story of righteous among the nations, of someone who risked their life to help save Jews, so that's, people enjoy that. It's a feel good story. This person, whether, hopefully they succeeded in saving Jews. Some people, paid with the price with their life. So it's not always the case. It's not always a happy ending, even to those stories. But we do see an increase in engagement for those types of posts because people, I think people want to believe in that. It's kind of connecting with your audience, and they want to feel that inspiration that these people did in their lives by helping save Jews, or other Jews helping save Jews as well. So they do get engagement. And in terms of the sad content, so I think it depends how you're marketing it. Just to share a post, did you know 6 million Jews died in the Holocaust? That doesn't really add value to social media, to the user's life. So even when we're posting sad topics, so we're always trying to add value in our posts. What can you learn? What can you get out of this? What can you do today now that you have this information?
Mm-hmm. Do you, Shelly Zagari shared something in the Hebrew. You can click translate posts underneath, at least on LinkedIn you can. If you guys see what she wrote, but she talked about the Memorial Day, and Shelly, if you want to write it in English, that would be better. But she also left a link to the Lochmei HaGhettot house, the ghetto house. Also, just you should check out her links. But Shelly, if you want to write what you did in English, I'd be happy to share. And if you can shorten it too, so I can share with other people. Do you find that? Well, let's bring this to this. It's just an interesting conversation topic because there's other people can relate to. In general, do you do A/B test messaging just like any other marketing does? And I mean, right? I feel like everything else you would do is just the same. Just your subject is much more sensitive. Would you say that what you actually do, with the exception of the extra sensitivities that you need to take, would you say your job is digital marketing is 90% the same than if, let's say, you work for a technology company or any other, or let's say B2C company?
Right. So the strategy is very similar. We do A/B testing on different copy, different creatives, targeting what resonates with people on promoted campaigns that we're running, especially things like that. What
resonates with people on this topic? I think people find this interesting. You have an interesting gateway into what resonates with people.
I think what resonates with people is things that are relevant and timely, right? So people don't want to hear about the Warsaw Ghetto Uprising in October, potentially, because it happened in April. So I think for marketers around the world, you're always trying to share relevant content that's relevant to today. What is it going to do for me, this content today? How is it going to help me today? Whether you're Monday.com and now you see a ton of ads about how to coordinate with your team during coronavirus. So that's a great example of how they're marketing their content to something that's relevant for April 21st, 2020. And so we try to do the same thing on social media with sharing meaningful, relevant Holocaust content. So we have a campaign on Twitter that is every single day. It's called OTD, on this day, and we share, like, on this day in 1944, 1942, this happened, that happened. And so we share relevant stories based on, the calendar, and we try to always make it relevant and timely.
Mm-hmm. Do you, when you actually have the, when you do you do any advertising on, like, to get, it might sound like a funny question, but I think there's a lot of power in this. Do you do advertising to get new followers? I think maybe on Yom HaShoah, people are more likely to follow you on Twitter, then you're able to engage and help them remember longer term. Do you do, like, following ads on Twitter and on social media so then you can continue to engage with them?
Right. So we do. I mean, we run paid campaigns on social media. We have done, to increase followers, things like that. One thing that we found, though, is that even just when we put out content, even if it's not, the objective is not to gain followers, when we put out content and we get in front of the right audience, and that's where targeting is so important. So, it's just it's like a byproduct of that we get more followers, especially around Yom HaShoah, like you mentioned, or International Holocaust Remembrance Day in January. We're always also trying to see how we can get those new followers to engage with us more than just being our, Facebook followers. So how to get them on the newsletter. And I think that's a really, important tip right now in marketing, is how to kind of consolidate audiences to understand who it is that you're trying to get to. Okay, targeting with custom audiences, people who sign up to your newsletter, retargeting, things like that, or lookalike audiences. So what we find is that when we share content, people, if it's engaging, people will engage with the post and follow us as well.
Awesome. Before we sign off, if anyone has any other comments or questions, now is the last time. This is the last call. Is there anything else that you think that you specifically want to share with us? Let's one in general from a Holocaust perspective, something about remembrance, or maybe something we can home that we can bring in general to learn. One, something easy we can do with our family. I think you mentioned you can do the virtual name reading. We left in the links. Just you can read a couple names, make a video of you and your kids, and you will be sharing it. Gabi will be sharing it online, and you'll be able to see that link later, and you can share it, which is cool, and show your kids that not just here's you reading it, look at all these other families reading it. I think there's a lot of power to that. What do you think is an easy way to remember or to teach your children? And then another thing, and then if you can also then leave us with a marketing tip.
So one thing that you can do today, we mentioned about the name reading campaign, and it puts a story, a name, a whole life behind the number, behind the statistic, and that's one of the things that Yad Vashem really tries to focus on in the museum and on our online exhibitions. So I definitely encourage everyone to join that campaign and share it with the two hashtags, hashtag Shoah Names and hashtag Remembering from Home. And I think, I don't know if a lot of people know, but we're currently in April. Obviously, people know that. But April, May, towards the end of the Holocaust was, Liberation Month. That's what it's become as. That's what it's known as now, where Allied armies liberated a string of camps during this time. So a lot of people don't have experiences, personal connections with different camps, different ghettos, different places that were unfortunately active in Eastern Europe. So I encourage people also to check out our website. We have a new section which is featured artifacts directly related to different camps, and it's a way to connect to these experiences of the people that were there via the artifacts that they had. The small things that they were able to take with them, or that they found there in different cases. So it's definitely featured artifacts on our website related to liberation is on our homepage. It's a nice way to connect during Liberation Month.
Got it. Okay. And if anyone wants to learn more, they can go to Yad Vashem work. and I'll put it over in the comments. And anything else you want to share specifically with marketers? Beto says you're right about adapting. By the way, guys, we're in a unique situation now with COVID, so obviously being able to adapt, adapting your messaging, adapting your sensitivity, but also using the importance of everyone's life is about this virus going on, the pandemic, is using that so you can help people. So make sure you're continuing to do that. Adapt your messaging and also adapt your sensitivity in sales too. And any last marketing tips you want to share?
So
that you think you learned, for you have a unique perspective. You have a unique perspective.
Right. So one thing I would say is that, through marketing, through sharing relevant Holocaust content. So we've had in the past trial and error. So we've seen, this doesn't work and this works and this was great and this didn't work. So I think people should always, plan out your calendar to the best of your ability, 2 weeks in advance, a month in advance, but leave time for things to adapt, because things pop up, things become relevant that were not relevant 2 weeks ago. And once you share content, it doesn't end there. People need to be analyzing. People need to be looking at, analytics, looking at their stats on whatever it is, Facebook ads, engagement, all these different insights that we have, and analyze to make better marketing decisions in the future. I think that's extremely key. Something that we do at Yad Vashem. We're always looking back to see how the campaign went, what we did, this worked, this didn't work, and how are we going to do better next year or next month or tomorrow even.
Awesome. So I'll end with that. Thank you so much for joining us, Gabi Duec, basically heading up social media and digital activities. I hope I said that right, at Yad Vashem. And this, we're concluding now our special live for Holocaust Remembrance Day, or Yom HaShoah, as it said in Hebrew. And we should remember the memories and use in their memories. We should fight all evil, anti-Semitism, and other bigotry, whether we see it on the internet, whether it's politicians, it's government, or public figures. We shouldn't be scared to speak out. It's important to have courage, probably one of the most important characteristics that we need in order to survive and thrive as liberal societies. Thank you again to Yad Vashem, and thank you very much for Gabi Duec, and thank you for all of you for joining us. If you have any other questions, you want to connect to Gabi, or you want to see if anyone from your family, anyone you know, gave a recorded testimonial, you want to be able to reach that, contact me and I'll connect you with Gabi and he'll be able to help you. And don't forget, take a short video of you or your family or your kids reading some names, and you can submit that. We left that in the link, so you'll be able to find it. If you can't find it, message it me or Gabi directly and we'll be able to provide. Thank you very much, everyone, and have a very important and meaningful Yom HaShoah Holocaust Remembrance Day. Thank you very much for joining us, Gabi.
Thanks for having me.